What does it mean to live together?
On this land.
In this place?
Burnt Thicket Theatre presents
We Treaty People. Audio dramas exploring what it means to embrace all our relations.
Welcome back for our conversation with the artists from last episode.
Flag.
My name is Yvette Nolan, and I'm the production dramaturge for We Treaty People.
My name is Stephen Walschmidt. I'm the artistic director of Burnt Thicket Theatre. Part of my personal journey in recent years has been about learning to see the history of Canada from Indigenous perspectives and unlearning cultural assumptions and practices I've received in my Eurocentric heritage. Of course, this learning and unlearning are ongoing.
As a company, Burnt Thicket is seeking to respond to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action number 83 to support good ways for Indigenous and non-Indigenous artists to collaborate in making theatre that contributes to reconciliation in these lands called Canada.
In our live shows after curtain call, we encourage audiences and artists to engage with each other, with the story, and with their real lives outside the theatre.
Given that these are digital performances, we hope this conversation with the artists will expand your reflection about the play.
We'd like to invite you to learn more. Check out the resources and suggestions in the episode description and our website.
We encourage you to talk about the play with your friends, to chat with us on Facebook, or in our virtual talkbacks on Zoom.
Or by leaving a response on our website. We want to hear what you think. And now, recorded on Treaty 6 territory, we bring you a conversation with the artists from Flag. Well, I'm really glad to have all of you here and that we're in person, and just so pleased with how the recording of the story went. I've got some questions that Yvette and I kind of put together, but first we'll start just by introducing ourselves around the circle. I'm Steve, but we want to go this way.
Okay. Hi, my name is Crystal Peterson. I'm playing or reading for Corey. Yeah, very excited to be here at this talking round table.
I'm Roxanne Dick. I am the director of this fantastic piece, and have just thoroughly enjoyed this process with the actors and the company.
I'm Tim Bratton. I'm recording and other things with the editing, so very happy to be here.
I'm Yvette Nolan. I wrote Flag, this play that you guys just recorded.
Yay!
My name is Jared Beatty, and I read for the character Andrew.
Wonderful. Well, part of this process and why we're having a conversation together is because we want to invite the audiences, our listeners, to reflect on some questions about the story and about their experience of the story. So the first couple questions are, what surprised you as you experienced this play, Flag? Or is there a line or an image from the play that has really stuck with you?
One line that has definitely stuck with me is it's kind of almost like a softer and more revealing moment for my character, which is that there's a line that says essentially, you who have been here on this land don't feel like you're part of the nation that encompasses this land. And for me, that's a really important tidbit of the whole kind of synopsis of the play to me. And again, like I said, it's interesting to me because that, in a way, it's that's the most not important thing he says, but it's something that does reveal, despite his defensiveness, there has been a little kernel of knowledge that has stuck with him through this process.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. I was gonna say that there's a lot of little moments. It's hard to pick one, but even like I am still here was like one of those lines that reflects Jared's comment. It's just because, you know, Indigenous people have always been here, and it's one of those moments. And like even the I felt seen, which we've talked about many times too. It's like, yeah, you feel so like when you've been here, a part of this land, but not visible. It's like you're this like invisible knowledge keeper of things from the land, and all of those like little moments. Those were big ones for me.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think because both of those resonate with me as well, and agree. There's so many that we had the actual blessing talking about for this rehearsal process, which was just amazing. There's a lot of unpacking about assumptions and the act of listening. We talked a lot about listening in this piece, and that Andrew relies very much on what he knows, what he's heard, what he's seen on TV, the news, can use the terms TRC and reconciliation, but isn't necessarily understanding it. And Jared knows this from notes every day. You know, we would talk about this one word that he has recurring in his dialogue, which is look. It was never I'm listening to you. It was look. I hear what you're saying, which he doesn't. Look is a real directive word that tells you my opinion is more important and negates everything you just told me. Look at me, hear me. And I thought that really it gave us an opportunity to talk about, you know, what is learning, what is active listening, how do people truly put in steps into an authentic sense of reconciliation as opposed to lip service for reconciliation. And so that was an important part, I think, for our conversations.
Lip service, I like that, because like I've never been in a conversation when you're like someone from a diverse culture. It seems to like some people sometimes pull out like those words that make you try or that make it feel like I'm including you, but it's so sometimes so racist what they're saying. It's just like I'm a person, like yes, I'm this color, but like I'm a person foremost. That why can't we have a conversation like pulling out words like the TRC or reconciliation and all these like things to make you feel like you're part of the circle or the conversation. It's like that feels so much worse to do than to just have an open conversation and listen is like those things like yeah.
Surely you must have
your favorite line all picked out already.
It's so, it was so astonishing to hear actors' voices on it, because when you write the play, it's all in your head and you think you know what's going on, and then to actually hear the magic of actors' voices is incredible. That is your look observation, Roxanne, is stunning to me, because that had not occurred to me. Like the thing just comes out the way it comes out. It is very much so much about, being disappeared and having to reimagine ourselves into being here on this land with each other. And, coming to that through just this one symbol of the flag of this place that we currently agree to call Canada was really clarifying for me. Like, what does it mean? Because right now, as we're recording this, we're all seeing the Ukrainian flags fly by everywhere, which is the same story about one group of people landing on another group of people. And so it's an old story that happens over and over again.
I think it's also another thing that we talked about, because as we were, I guess it was happening somewhat close to when we were working on this, was the idea of the truck convoys. and those kinds of things, and how you can take a flag that means something to someone, and it might mean something very dear. It might not have the same resonance with others. We did unpacked kind of our own ideas about what the flag meant to each of us. But then to see it kind of taken and it means an entirely different message, you realize how fragile the symbol really is. Right. And, you know, the act of, you know, when Andrew couldn't come up with the right answer, he was, you know, he couldn't win sometimes against Corey. Well, I don't really at any time. But in answer, instead of words, it was raise the flag, you know, let's keep doing it. And there's the one that says he raises it faster in stage directions. And it was because there are no words. I just know this means something. I've been taught that this means something. It was an action that became, you know, substitute and power, right? It was a way to take some power back in his corner, because she's asking really interesting questions. And just the way it blows Andrew's mind, that the idea of like flying something at quarter-mast, well, that doesn't make any sense. You can just see Andrew's brain explode a little bit there in those moments. And so it really asks Canadians to unpack what is, you know, what are our symbols and what are we hanging on to them for? Mm-hmm. Not to, and you know, I'm not suggesting that, you know, flags don't have some obviously resonance in countries. Of course they do. That's why they're there, and that's why, you know, athletes put them around their shoulders at the Olympics and so on. But to unpack what it could mean, and there's that moment in the monologue with Corey where she talks about, you know, I felt seen, but she throws her head back in exasperation upon being bombarded with the news of bodies being found. And what brings her back to earth is seeing the flag at half-mast, and what that represents to Corey is dialogue, is a conversation. And I think that if we could start somewhere there, then I think that's much more meaningful than just saying, well, this matters to me and I'm going to hang on to it as tight as I can because this is what I've been taught, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what does it mean to have the courage to ask that question?
It is about conversation, all of it, absolutely. Because it's, you know, we use those, it's not just the symbol of the flag, it's also the words, like reconciliation. We're all making air quotes every time we say reconciliation. That if we just, you know, and the words and the symbols, everything can be co-opted by the other side. So we need to keep unpacking it. We need to keep being in conversation. We need to keep discussing what we mean when we say these words, what we mean when we fly this flag, which is essentially what flag is about. It's like, what do we mean when we we run the flag up, or we run it at half-mast or quarter-mast?
Right.
Yeah, we definitely talked quite a bit about symbolism, I guess, the symbol of the flag. What does it mean? And then through talking about that, I think we discovered how easily that you can take that symbol and subvert it or appropriate it. And, you know, as we've seen in recent history, and I mean, I'm sure there are some people across this country right now that are like kind of coming to terms with that, or just at least hopefully thinking about that. You know, my whole life, the Canadian flag has been a symbol of, you know, freedom or what have you. And now we're just seeing how, like I said, how easy it is to kind of say, well, I'm going to take that, I'm going to use that for my purposes. Sometimes that's at like direct opposition to something else. So.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yes.
Yeah, thanks everybody. This is good. I don't want to shut down this part of the conversation, but I also want to ask Yvette, would you be willing to share a little more about the inspiration for you as the playwright? You know, where this story came from?
Yeah, for sure. And part of, you know, when I look back on what I write about, so often what I write about is trying to save something that I think is going to be disappeared. And so when we started talking about We Treaty People, and then they started discovering, I'm making air quotes again, the bodies. And all the flags went to half-mast. When we started talking about this, they were still at half-mast. But I felt that I knew Remembrance Day was coming up, and I knew that they were going to want to raise the flags so that they could lower the flags for veterans. And I knew that we would forget, that the people who live on this land together would forget about that period of time when the flag was at half-mast for the Indigenous children who were lost. And that's why I wrote Flag, because it was like, let's capture this moment in time. And sure enough, while I was writing it, the flags went back up. But so it's a little bit of a snapshot of a moment in time that people can return to and listen to and remember. Because by the time this airs, people will have forgotten so much of this.
Yeah.
And that is so much of, for me, what we do in theater is capture things so that they can be remembered by people.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you.
And experienced.
Yeah.
I mean, the beauty of us getting it to the recording and to, it makes it tangible and real. And
But they're still finding bodies.
Yeah.
I know,
Like,
but
it's
the
not
flags
like
don't
they-
go down again, do
No,
they?
they're not. Like
Yeah.
like they should be at half-mast for like the net until they're done finding them.
This is Andrew's question,
Yeah.
right? Like, where's the cutoff?
Yeah. Because we talked about like the timeline and knowing that yes, it was like previous to like October, like in November, but like in my brain I had it because I'm like they're still finding bodies, they're still going through like reserves, but nobody talks about it anymore. And like what is the number up to now? It's baffling.
Yeah.
Because it's like if you look at all the TRCs and the ones that went and how many didn't make it home, like that's the we knew, and it's like now we're finding all of the ones that were missing or went missing. This flag should be at half-mast all year.
In perpetuity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also like the idea that we were playing. Like, if you just seen, I love the thermometer bit.
yeah, we all love the
Such a
thermometer.
great moment. And like,
She's made it into a talk show.
to this day, like I still think like that is a brilliant idea to have like a barometer of like
You just see the flag just,
national
like, moving.
identity and like what are bad things are happening, what are good things are happening, where do we land in the spectrum of are we proud to be Canadians today versus yesterday? Have we improved? Are we getting worse?
But it's also strange, I find, like when the flag's at half-mast, it makes you think, okay, what happened? It makes you then go into CBC or go somewhere because something happened. Like it's big enough that everybody then reflects on what's, like gets away from the texting and our busy worlds where we wear blinders constantly, and it's like, oh yeah, there's a big world out there. What has just happened? Like it's big and small all at the same time. It's like, so it would be kind of cool to see like when the flag is like fluctuating like a thermometer.
Is the flag like the stock
would
market?
that make
It
people
ebbs and
start-
flows.
Would that make people start having more conversations or be more aware or start talking because they're seeing
Yeah.
it move? Because when it goes back up, everybody just goes back to their lives. And
You added some other names of reserves or locations where bodies have been found, and I think one of you named Battlefords, which in the moment, like literally, during that rehearsal, I had to go and look up online because, I mean, I've been trying to be less connected to the news feed because through COVID it's been a little bit too much fodder for anxiety, and it caught me and was like, Battleford, why haven't I heard that? Why hasn't that been on the headlines? And maybe it's me because I have been focused on what I need to do and not paying attention. But it also made me wonder, like you just said, do people know that that this is continuing to be?
Well, whether
discovered, air
it's
quotes,
4
you know.
bodies or
Yeah, yeah.
like 215 bodies
Yeah.
or
Or
like
700,
1,000
yeah,
bodies,
uh-huh.
it's still important.
Yeah.
But the big ones are the ones that are
Yeah.
put into the news, not the places that are finding like a small single digit numbers.
Well, in Andrew's line, when you start listing those things and there's that overlap, you know. Well, first he's like, we're doing this for Kamloops, period. But then it's paralysis, you know, and so on. And she has very readily lots of examples.
Mm-hmm.
And he finally shuts her down. And we know it's ongoing. And the fact that then what that says is we're at a place where we're just going to live with it. We know we're going to hear more. Yeah. But we can't be doing this willy-nilly all the time, to use Andrew's words, just to be clear. But the willy-nilliness of, like, in his mind, it's like, well, yes, we've now made this statement. Isn't that enough? Doesn't that prove that we care? But we know it's ongoing. It's not going to stop. But he seems to, like, he kind of accepts that in an interesting way. It's not that he's obviously happy about it, but to him it's part of this uncovering for him, not for obviously Corey's character. But it really got us talking too about, you know, what priority do we put? Because he has this line, well, what happens if some important person dies? Like, all these children aren't important? Like, you know, it sort of implies then the measure of that. And also these, like, well, I've got to have this ready because something's going to happen. We have to be ready for the next terrible thing that happens. I thought that was quite fascinating when we were working through the script. So.
What are we willing to live with, or that's expected. Yeah.
Right. And being prepared for the next thing.
Like, and is that more respectful?
Yeah.
Like, is
We have to
like
we have to neatly package this issue, put it in a box, put it on a shelf somewhere where we can look at it, but not really think about it too much, because the next news cycle is going to come through.
But that was an interesting conversation that we had. Was like it like and I'm asking this honestly because I don't think we ever asked. But is there, because we lower the flags for a reason. When they go up, there isn't like a rule book that says when they go up or down. It's just you can decide whenever. I'm like, how come going down has so much meaning, but putting it back up doesn't?
Yeah, I think there's probably a rule book for the thing that they originally created it for, which is like, you know, public figures, former prime ministers, those kinds of things. So there is probably in the rule book, like, you know, it goes down and it stays at half-mast for 3 days. I'm just making up, but whatever the rule is. And I think, so this is actually hopeful to me, Crystal, that you raised this, because I think once they started lowering the flag for other things that were not about singular, essentially white men,
Yes.
that they were like, we should lower the flag as a sign of respect, and they did that. But because the rule book is only dealing with singular white men, there is no rule about when it goes back up, which is how we arrive at this play, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually, in a way, that makes me hopeful to think that we are opening that symbolism in a way to include more people.
Yeah. Yeah, and as complicated as it is to raise it again, as far as my limited knowledge, to have them down as long as they were is significant. And I don't know, have they been lowered for that long before?
I don't think they ever have been lowered for that long, which is why it was such an easy idea to turn into a play. Because of that thing that she talks about, like throwing her head back and seeing the flag and feeling seen. And that was me, right? Like, that was me. Especially when it's like on, you know, the grocery store.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that's like, those are people. Like civilians, citizens who are making those choices, which is different from the government, which is like, you know, a prime minister dies and therefore the flag goes down.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And even the sales of the orange T-shirts probably went up that day too.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
people were paying attention and wanting to like reflect on every child matters, because there's the one day that we have, but now it's like no, with every child matters. I remember seeing, because I think it was not shortly after that, but at Victoria School here, if you saw on their fence, they put little handprints, orange handprints all along the fence. I think they're still up. They were there most of the year, but it was just kind of a really nice thing to see that like people were talking again. It's like, I think that's the biggest takeaway is like we need to start conversations, like you were saying.
Here's a question that's from a little different direction, but we want to ask, how are you connected to this land and to the communities around you?
How am I connected to my land? I guess just in so many different ways. I mean, I grew up in the country, so city living's actually, like urban living has actually been an adjustment I've made over my adult life. I feel the land around me has always been incredibly sacred and special. I guess my Métis roots take me to the St. Albert area. That's where my ancestors are from, and certainly where I feel a connection to many relatives and to that part of the story, which did include lots of Catholic influence on my family that was very negative, very difficult. But yeah, for me, communities are now how I think of living in groups, not necessarily always being in the country, but that sense of carving out that space and that sense of community is, I'm very grateful that it's varied with many different people, with many different ancestries and backgrounds. But I think we'd also insulate ourselves a little in the sense that our communities are so often very like-minded people. And that does, like whoever you are, whatever your beliefs are. And so I've been really thinking a lot about that, because how do you get, if you just talk to your own group of people, your own, you can call it community or your circles or your friendships or like-minded people, how do you have dialogue? How do you actually open that up in a meaningful way? Because what I've seen in the last couple of years, and I think most people would agree, is a sense of divisiveness that's even more alive, with people being bolder to draw distinctions instead of connections. So I don't know where we are right now with community, and if that means conversations, how we can come together without that conflict right out of the gate, which I feel is where many people start right now. It was like I said in one of the meetings that, I gave the land acknowledgement from stage and heard grumbling in the audience. It was a particular, I won't say which artist or whatever, because the artist was lovely, but that particular crowd felt like that they didn't want to hear it. And so how do you come to a place where you can, of respect in our communities, in conversation and dialogue, as I said. I feel that we're lacking in that. We've taken, I truly feel we've taken in some ways many strides forward and steps back in how we connect to people. And perhaps that is healed and resolved through connection to land and place and people, but I'm not sure. I don't have that answer. I thought I did a number of years ago, but this last couple of years has made me really take pause.
Mm-hmm. Because I am deracinated, my relationship to land is quite broad. Like, I was born here in Saskatchewan, Prince Albert, because my dad was teaching at the penitentiary. But my mom is Algonquin from Quebec, but she never got home again because residential school, sanatorium, urban living, right? So I'm not connected to that land at all. But we moved to Winnipeg, and I grew up in Winnipeg. And then I moved to the Yukon, where it felt like that was home. And then I moved to Nova Scotia, and then I moved to Toronto. So I've lived all over the place. And in order to be connected, I have developed a connection to the land on which I stand at any given moment. So I feel very much like I am connected to this land, Turtle Island, in a way, because I'm not connected to where my community is placed. And that's not even a natural placement, right? Like we were squished onto like properties that was not the way we lived anyway. So over my life, I have developed that connection to all of the land of this country, and a responsibility in every place that I am to the land. And I guess that's for me what it is. Like my connection to land is about my responsibility to the land on which I stand at any given moment.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I really like that actually, because I'm also someone who I feel like I'm not connected to land in a strong or spiritual way. But I have been born and raised on the Canadian prairies my entire life. And so I do feel that over the course of my life, I have learned some simple appreciation for just what we have here. And, there's a line in this play that says, this land is not perfect, but at the same time, it does afford us like this freedom to speak out openly about our wounds and our scars. So yeah, I'm very actually glad to just kind of hear that perspective from you. And on a very superficial level, like what I do just love about where we live is kind of those things that we often get like made fun of for on the prairies, which is like nothing but land as far as you can see. But I do, like, I love that. There's something that's like, there's a humility in seeing that and realizing, for me, like a part of my connection to land is realizing I myself as a single organism, I'm insignificant to this land. This land serves me in so many ways. And as you say, if I can find some small way to like, to serve it, to take some responsibility for it, then that would be, I guess, what I would be striving for at this time in my life.
I guess for me, I've always, like, my favorite place, just going, like, being on the land out of the city. And I've struggled because I'm adopted, and I've spent a good chunk of my adult life trying to find kind of where I belong. I know half of my family, but not the other half. So I'm from Buffalo Narrows, but from here, but the north. So, and I always find like the cities sometimes are so claustrophobic. It's like my favorite part is just getting out. Like when I'm needing to just focus is getting out into the land. Like I feel like I've been to New York or like Vancouver and Toronto, and I find those places so suffocating because you're surrounded by just like buildings and everything's covered. I love how like, and I know it's always a joke about how much space we have, but it's beautiful how much like that openness, and then you don't feel like you're being like bombarded by things. If you can just get out and be out in the space. I'm someone who just loves space and my own space and everything. So I find that's where I'm most connected, is when I'm focused in around like where I am in the moment, but also getting out of where I am in the moment to experience something else and let something else kind of flood in. So I've always kind of been, I like to be where I am, but I also like to surround myself with people that that positivity, like good, or else just being kind of by myself within the connections. 'Cause I'm like, there's no space for not like-minded people, but that negativity to enter in. It's just, I've been finding, just in my own finding, trying to figure out how to connect. It's so much easier to just be in the space and just even alone if no one can fill it with what I need in the moment. Which I find a lot, the land here in the space of the prairies, like, even going for a drive, I know you're in a car, but it's like the space, how much space we have, you could watch things forever. And the sunsets and the sky, there's so much that I love about all of that space. And it fills me up.
I don't want to put words in your mouth at all, but like it sounds to me what you're saying is like your connection to the land is almost based on your ability to disconnect from like the anxieties of life and people and that kind of thing. And I think that definitely resonates for me.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah.
Just having that there's something out there bigger than what's going on.
Right.
Like if there's this much, that's like the perfect way to put it. It's like, because anxiety I find is so claustrophobic. All the buildings, everything gets small, and like, because there's so many other more amazing things if you can just see. Like our land here is just always so beautiful.
Yes.
The medicines and the river and like all the things. There's so much beauty in the space that some people don't like. It's like, it's so amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like what you said about humility, because there's, I don't know, I grew up in different cities. I grew up in 5 years in Indonesia. Didn't necessarily feel any connection to places where I necessarily grew up, but coming to kind of visit the Canadian prairies and eventually become adopted into my in-laws' family, who've grown up on a farm a few minutes outside of Maskwacis in Alberta. It's like some part of me was like, oh, I belong here, and I feel this sense of connection there. But there's also like the fascination of the Rocky Mountains, and which I didn't grow up with, and so like seeing them, it's like there's this spectacular quality to them, whereas the land here in Saskatchewan is, there's the beauty is like you need to look for it and or look up at the sky for it, and there's an invitation rather than a shouting at you. I have really come to love the prairie and see it as and the prairie here and the river valley, and I've lived here longer on the banks of, not quite on the banks, but nearby the river. That's where I want to go. I always want to go to the river and walk along the river. But lived here longer than anywhere else. So a follow-up question about this connection to land and to the communities around you. How could you grow to be more connected?
Well, Crystal, when she was talking about this, all
All
of us texting
All
on
of
our
us on our
machines
phones, yeah.
all the time, that's a way to be more connected, is to put that thing down
Yeah.
once in a while and to get information from other sources rather than this,
Yeah.
which is other human beings, right? Or the land, or conversation, or like there's so many other things. I think we've become really dependent on the internet. And that way madness lies, because the power's going to go out and nothing will work, and we'll need to know things that we can't access on Kokum Google.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, look up. We need to get out and just see things from all perspectives. I just sometimes feel like there's just such blinders on, or you're so stuck inside just this like whatever's within your phone view or a TV and that kind of thing, and it's just trying to put it away and go outside. Like, it's like all those things I think would help for myself, just be more connected.
yeah, I mean, I think it's the greatest act of self-care is to, I think we've become so used to doing that, like the connectivity to technology and entertainment, things that, you know, the noise gets loud in our heads. And so I think, you know, we have to retrain ourselves sometimes. It's go outside, as you say. I live at the honor, and I don't take it for granted a single day, but I live on right on the North Saskatchewan. Our house overlooks it, and I think one of my favorite things is just watching it as it through the seasons, and that sense of it, the movement, like when that ice breaks, and it's powerful, and that water out, I won't see that water again. That's gone, right? There's just a wash, a movement, a current, and it's beautiful and incredible. And to me, it is a very spiritual moment when that ice breaks. Like there's an excitement around that, but also it's just such a powerful metaphor for us to live. And then, you know, watching it freeze and rest, and you know, you can learn so much and from that. So water is something that connects me, and then I think, oh, that water's gonna, you know, it's gonna reach other people I know or people I don't know. It's gonna be there soon, you know, and there is something about that, the reason that waterways connect communities as well. But I think movement, in all ways, is what does connect us, and that means movement of the mind, movement of the spirit, movement of the conversation. Like that has to happen. And so I think if we can take a lesson from the land and nature, that we can actually do that.
The land is so smart, though. I watched a video of a bear waking up from hibernation, and I was like, could you imagine? But like how, because in winter, and that's something that the prairies gets to experience, is like the land itself rests when snow falls, and it rests. And now it's like we're entering spring, where it's a time for regrowth and like you're just shedding. And like, could you imagine if we as humans just took a moment to just rest and then reinvigorate ourselves every year? Like, how much better would things be? Like, to just get out of the busy and just like learn from, because the earth does it every year. Like it's like so smart in all of the ways that and animals do it, and the water does it. Like, I had a conversation with my friend about that too, because I was like, it's kind of neat how like, because she's in New Orleans, but like there's no snow there, but they're entering into spring, so things do sleep, but it's different here, how the snow like completely covers things, lets it rest, and then melts away to like reinvigorate and restart something brand new, which is really neat.
Yeah, I would just kind of jump off on a similar point about like moving water. I've been privileged enough that everywhere I've lived in this city for the last 15, 20 odd years has been mere steps, like 2 or 3 minutes walk from the river. And that's, you know, I've lived 7 or 8 locations, and that's just something that's always kind of been central to each of those locations, is that I can look out my window or take a short brief stroll, and it's right there. Another thing that I'm kind of just like realizing that I love about land, that big word, is, I don't have much by way of what I would call ritual or spiritual ritual in my life, but every place I've ever traveled, Canada, the States, Europe, there's always, it's really important to me to find a moment to just find a patch of grass, you know, somewhere to put your feet in water. And I love those moments in a, you know, even a bustling metropolis you've never been in, and you turn a corner and there's trees and grass, and to just sit and be quiet and just appreciate that simplicity. That's always been something I've sought out quite often.
I remember calling my mom once, and I was so frustrated and mad. no recollection what I was, see, that's the thing, no recollection what I was frustrated about. But her answer to me was, sounds like you need to go outside and put your bare feet in the grass. And I thought, what a good answer.
Right?
I've kind of hung on to that all these years.
There's actually a scientific, it's called grounding.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can buy mats now. I'm getting all tangenting. But, like, how, like, our feet on earth is a way of, like, rooting and grounding yourself, and the energy you get from the earth helps heal your body. So it's, like, it's fun. Again, we go back to, like, the land is just so helpful in so many ways that we don't think about.
One more question, and we can circle back to any of the other questions, but I wanted to ask you, how has telling this story affected the ways you see other people, or what the phrase "all my relations" means to you?
For me, I'm just this. I am somebody that has experienced racism since I was like in grade 1. So it's like it's so all the time in my world, and I see it, but it's like it's really good and important to tell those stories about seeing and accepting people for who they are. So I appreciate that we're telling these stories, and to kind of, we're all people living together. Doesn't matter what color our skin is, we're all human beings, and we need to see each other as people first, not by the color of a skin and making assumptions on who somebody is by what they look like.
I mean, I would hope that for me that this process has just, again, kind of like reinforced, similar to what you're saying, like there are so many life experiences that, you know, everyone has. There's the expression, you know, everyone's fighting their own battle or what have you. So whenever I work on a project of this nature, it usually is just like a helpful and gentle reminder of that for me, to just exercise patience with everything and everyone, and use your eyes and your ears more than your mouth. And just, as you say, like, accept people for who they are, not where they fit in a category.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I mostly reflect on with something like this, is just, you know, I know that. I know there are people of all sorts in this world, but I also know that I don't know anything about what it's like to live their life. I barely know what it's like to live my own, to be honest with you. But no, it's like, it's just important for me to, I guess there's that the term, like, to decenter yourself in a way, and just allow, you know, this group, this community, to kind of seep in and take that away. You know, like, tomorrow I'm not going to be a different person because I sat here talking with you, but I'll have learned something, and maybe the next day and the day after that, it will adjust my ability to understand people and to support them in whatever way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that idea of cumulative growth, right? Like, I think this piece actually made me hopeful, because it's these two complete strangers that are very different from one another. And while it gets, you know, like the temperature sort of rises in the conversation from time to time throughout the piece, it's hopeful in the sense that at the very end, there is listening. Andrew doesn't end the piece. You know, it's definitely the voice is Corey's. Yes, her experience is something that Andrew, the character Andrew's, you know, really can't understand. But I feel like we were joking, you know, what if there was a part 2 to this? Like, what would they be doing? Because I feel like it will change Andrew in some way. And maybe that's not all at once and radical. We can't look always for that as to measure success in how we have conversations. Sometimes you have to go away and reflect. You have to go away and think And someone like Corey can change someone like Andrew's life just by stopping and having that conversation about something so integral to, you know, that powerful national symbol. So I think that's what I take away from this. And the act of listening, like I said before, like the power of that.
We all need to be a little bit like Corey.
Yeah.
Or a lot like Corey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think about Thomas King's Massey lectures, The Truth About Stories, and every lecture, every chapter in the book, he tells a story, and then at the end of the chapter, the lecturer, he says, "Don't say that you would have lived your life differently if you'd known this story. You know it now." And that's what it feels like to me doing this kind of work, telling these kinds of stories. So yeah, Corey can change. Andrew, chapter 2 is like, Andrew comes to work one day and Corey's sitting there with 2 coffees waiting for him to put the flag up. And it's like, oh, we're going to continue this, are we? Because it has to be, right? It has to be an ongoing conversation.
Yes. Yeah.
And we have to be generous in our teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And the other side has to be generous in the listening.
Yeah.
And that's what makes, my relations true.
Yep.
Yeah, or even better, you know, Andrew has 2 coffees and it's another white settler friend, and he says, "You know what? Something happened to me yesterday."
Yeah.
And I don't really know about this quite yet, but I learned an important thing or two.
We have a series of podcasts happening.
Flag 2, flag 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Generous teaching, generous listening.
Mm-hmm.
Any other last thoughts? Anybody would like to share?
I don't want to belabor this point, but I do think that it bears mentioning. Like I really appreciate that the way that this character was written, and we've talked about this like a little bit as well, in that he wasn't just like a cut and dry, here's the bad guy. He says a bunch of mean stuff, and therefore we can look at him and shake our finger and go, "You son of a gun, you should know better than that." But there really is like an effort to make him a more complex person, in that, you know, he has made an effort to learn something, and maybe that comprehension has not gone all the way, you know, like much like the country. We're not perfect, but maybe we're a little bit better than we were yesterday. So yeah, sometimes you get like cast in a role and you look at it and you go, "Oh no," you know? Really, I gotta say that. Okay. But no, I do think like that's true, in that it's not a look at how good this person is versus how bad this person is. It's like, look what happens when we put them together and their orbits kind of rub, and they go, there is something to learn from each other, you know, hopefully both ways. But I certainly appreciate that as an actor, as a white man, to see that, you know, yes, of course we can put in effort, we can do better, but it's not I read the TRC and now I'm good, you know?
Yeah.
So that was just really nice to see.
Yeah.
It's being open to have a brave conversation without getting offended, which is what this is so brilliantly, because Corey challenges Andrew many times.
Yes.
But Andrew never, like, he could totally just slam the book in her face and walk away, like, but he stays there. I think that's the biggest for me. Being willing to have brave conversations and not get offended.
Yeah. Yeah, that generosity, or that withholding and waiting, and not jumping to, oh, you fit this category or that place, and seeing one another. I mean, there's
because that's part of the learning and the listening. Like, wanting to learn is one thing, but then having the conversation, you might not totally enjoy what you hear, but that's how we learn and get better. And that goes for everybody, any kind of conversation.
We Treaty People is a production of Burnt Thicket Theatre.
Support our work with a donation and learn more about the artists at burntthicket.com.
And to check out our website or the episode description for links to other great learning resources.
Special thanks go to the Canada Council for making this project possible.
And to our season sponsors, Surecom Industries and SK Arts. This work was gratefully created on Treaty 6 territory and on the homeland of the Métis.
Join us next time for another audio drama episode of We Treaty People.